Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 2 of the Wrestling Wrealm. We back. We are back. The lights are brighter. We got a brand new set. I'm ready. How about shouts out to my boy Cameron G. But why you looking at me like that? What did I do?
You got some explaining to do, buddy.
What are you talking about?
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. You got some explaining to, Chief.
Okay.
I'm waiting for an answer about some things that I'm sure people in the realm know. But I digress. Let's move on with
the
it.
business. Let's take care of business at hand.
Let's take care of
people.
business.
Gang warfare. You've been waiting. We gave you the preview in Season 1, and here it is. We are going to discuss some of the biggest, most impactful, and maybe some of the ones that just annoyed us factions in the history of professional wrestling. I wonder why the real Dwayne Ella keeps looking at me like I'm crazy.
Anyway, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. The most impactful factions in professional wrestling history. We all know that factions have always played a major part in our favorite wrestling product, whether it was now, yesterday, or even of the golden ages of yesteryear. And factions as a whole and in different groups have always had their place with us as far as wrestling fans and what we like to discuss. So we are here inspired by a number of things that have been happening inside of the wrestling realm. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, factions and groups have formed within the wrestling realm. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's been a whole lot of stuff going on. We have real life feuds, real life beef going on.
New Nation, baby.
With a number of major things going on. So it has inspired us to go full force into Season 2 and started off with gang warfare. The greatest and our most favorite factions in professional wrestling. Mr. Main Event, are you ready to get Season 2 underway?
Let's get this started.
Let's do this.
So, since it was your idea, you being the genius that you are, we're going to let you start. What are you doing?
Huh?
What are you doing?
Oh, you know, I saw this laying around, and you seem to have forgotten about it.
I didn't forget about it. Obviously, I brought it to the studio.
Yeah, I understand, but it was just laying there. I don't know.
Here he goes with that again.
Feeling kind of extreme today. You feel me?
Oh my gosh.
But I digress. The first group we're going to talk about, which is in my opinion, probably one of the most important factions in all of professional wrestling. I'm talking about the group that made having a group and having a faction that much more important, and is arguably probably one of the best, if not the best faction to ever grace the world of professional wrestling, and that is the Four Horsemen.
Woo!
There you have it. The Four Horsemen. Arguably the most important faction of professional wrestling. Why? Let's discuss it.
I mean, star after star. Recently inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
I mean, you had Four Horsemen in two decades, you know. And obviously, the diehard wrestler fans will argue that the Four Horsemen with Pillman, Benoit, Arn, and Flair was nowhere near of what the Four Horsemen was before. But in my opinion, that was the Four Horsemen that I actually grew up and watched it and hated. And I hated them just as much as, say, some of my boys hated the ones that was beating up Dusty Rhodes each and every day. You know, now I didn't care for the one with Mongo McMichael and them. But then let's go back to the ones that got inducted. We had Tully, Arn, Nature Boy, Barry Windham, you know, and then led by J.J. Dillon.
Absolutely. That was a great, maybe not the original four, three out of the original four. Of course, Ole Anderson was not inducted along with the Four Horsemen, but the group itself was. So technically he's in the Hall of Fame. But Barry Windham, a very good replacement at one point, one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. I think the Four Horsemen represented something that had never been done before. If you listen to Ric Flair's Definitive Collection DVD, he goes into detail about how the Four Horsemen, him and Arn Anderson, actually explain how it actually came about and how they were actually trying to save TV time, and they just decided to take all the champions instead of giving their own separate segment interviews. They put them all in one. And Arn Anderson had came up with this idea, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and they pretty much ran with that. The group was so strong because it had the world champion had your, I believe was United States champion. Tully Blanchard was United States champion. And then you had Ole and Arn as the tag team champions. So you had the top guys of the company all in one. Was he television championship or United States championship? Who? Tully Blanchard.
I believe he was U.S. You know, that's before my time.
I could be wrong.
I know Arn was, you know, definitely one of the top TV champions, you know.
Right, absolutely.
So,
and you have the top guys in your company come together to make this dominant group. And whether you like it or not, a lot of people paid to see NWA wrestling to see these guys all in one night. Now as a faction, they were different because they were, in my opinion, 4 different main event style guys. Back in those days, the main event didn't have anything to do necessarily all the time with the top belt of the company, the World Championship. You know, I mean, sometimes you saw main event caliber guys in the TV Championship in the United States in the tag title roles. So you have these 4 guys.
He had both belts.
Both, okay.
And of course, tag titles with Arn.
Naturally, you know,
well, in WWE too.
Right, yeah.
Well, yeah, WWF there was also tag team champions as the Brainbusters.
The Brainbusters, okay, that's what I thought. So you have these 4 guys, and these, I mean, like I said, at the top of their game, and it's like the most dominant group. And this wasn't like a group where, okay, as we go on, we'll talk about some other guys that were in factions that became important because they were in factions, but they had, you know, 4 individuals who could stand alone. And when you put them all together, it's like that's what made them one of the most dominant forces. They made it cool. People all around the world want to be Four Horsemen, and not to mention their style. These guys were talking about their lifestyle that Ric Flair constantly brags about and takes pride and joy of who he is. You look at the way they dressed, the way they lived, the way they did things, and the way they sold out arenas.
Yep.
You know, and headline Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions, all over the country. And that's what they did for the business as far as setting a tone. You didn't see anything like that in a long time. Now, granted, you saw so many different incarnations of the Four Horsemen, but there wasn't that many groups that made you say, okay, we can put together a faction and they can draw the way that this group did.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like I said, I mean, you look at how smart they were, and then you even looking at with Ole and Arn. And I remember when they had the Greatest Family DVDs, how you thought, I mean, for the longest time, I thought Ole and Arn were naturally cousins.
Right.
You know, or brothers or whatever. I thought they were always related. But now, Four Horsemen was one of them groups. They had a lot of people. You know, Sting was a Four Horseman. Sid, Paul Roma. List goes on and on. But the ones you just named were the foundation.
Absolutely.
Of that group. Obviously, you can't have a Four Horsemen. To me, people always overlook Arn Anderson. I think the WWE did that on purpose by making him go last at the Hall of Fame because you couldn't have a Four Horsemen without Arn.
No, not
even
the
when Ric Flair had quote unquote left only to betray Sting later, Arn Anderson was still the foundation.
Absolutely.
Flair was the one who Flair was the face of the franchise, but without Arn Anderson, it just wasn't right.
Absolutely. The Four Horsemen, just the name itself, the group of the Four Horsemen in general, not the individuals involved in it, but just to be, that lasted for so long. If you look at WCW, you know, with the reincarnation of the Horsemen with guys like Kurt Hennig and Chris Benoit and all those other guys, you realize that thing, they really wrote that out for a long time. As long as J.J. Dillon or Arn Anderson was somehow involved in it, even as a managerial role. Yep. I mean, just mentioning that on, Ric Flair talks about his disputes with Eric Bischoff a lot, and how when WCW, they only used Flair after a while when they had nothing else to do. They could always go back to Flair because he was a natural draw. And naturally, he would bring the guys with him, and, you know, he could start the Four Horsemen again. And had a new group of guys that he felt like were workhorses that really represented who the Four Horsemen as a brand really was. And, you know, you have an easy Four Horsemen versus the NWO feud. And, of course, it wouldn't last for so long, but the fact that it was still being able to use during that time, you know what I mean? Oh, something that started back in, what, 86 in NWA, to, you know, lasted all the way to about 99. Right. You know what I mean? So
all the way to the end, you know. Pretty much they wrote literally to the end of the demise of WCW.
I mean, and that just a true testament to how important a fact like that. And not only did they set the foundation for themselves, I think they set the foundation for every other important faction and person that made a difference in the business as we know it today.
Definitely. Enough said. You know, yeah, I guess they know better. Who's your next big faction?
I'm punk in the shy, call me Snooker cause I'm super and fly. You can hate all you want, but I'm flossing. The Miz said I'm awesome, and I'm upholding the law just like the big boss man. When Mr. Main Event, Brian Waters, the real Dwayne Allen, toss you over the border like Hernandez, Mandez, pressing the stands. It's the show for the intelligent wrestling fans. Hitman like Hawk, but I'm not from Calgary. I'm all about the bill, so let that gold dust shower me, empower me like Farouk and the nation. If you don't know your history, then you should change the station. But if you do, you can cruise to YouTube / the Wrestling Wrealm. Your lessons are stale. Say the same old lines, man, you destined to fail. Like the Shockmaster or the Wrestler Nails. I'm a heartbreak kid, and my bid to be champion is unmatched.